I'm Melanie Sayward, and you are tuning in to The Pink Elephant. Hey there, Pink Elephant listeners. I have a great episode for you this month. You may recall Marty Solomon, a very insightful author and podcaster who appeared in the finale episode of this podcast in season 4. Well, he's been very busy co-authoring a book with Reed Dent called The Gospel of Being Human. Now, the book doesn't come out until next year in April. My husband Josh and I had the privilege of interviewing Marty all about this new book, and it is brilliant. So enjoy this episode, but also make sure you listen till the end of the episode as I have a little announcement too. Hey Marty, it's so good to have you on the podcast again. How's things over there? I believe you're in Texas at the moment, is that right?
I am in Texas. I am on the road and things are good. Texas is always fun. It is a unique place and I just enjoy being here. So it's been a good week.
I've been to America a fair few times from Australia, but actually Texas is one of those places I've never been to. So yes.
Yeah. It is everything that they say it is and probably a little bit more, mostly in a good way. So yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, look, we got you on here today with the Pink Elephant podcast because you have a new book coming out, The Gospel of Being Human, which comes out in April. Would love to hear a bit about it. What I've read so far, it seems like there's a bit of a continuation of your previous book in the sense that it's really asking questions, but this obviously is with a bit of nuance. There's a little bit of a different angle that it's coming from, but we'd love if you could just tell us a bit of a overview of what it's all about.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad that you sensed that because that's exactly what it's supposed to be. There will ultimately be 3 books in what we're calling the Asking Better Questions series. And so it's a follow-up to the first book, and it should have, all 3 books should have this tone of what difference does it make when we ask good questions and in relationship to the scriptures. So that first book that we did, Asking Better Questions of the Bible, is really a book about hermeneutics. It's about how to read and interpret the Bible well by knowing where you're at in the biblical library. And then this next book is the follow-up. If we start reading the Bible better, it should, I would imagine, impact our theology. Oftentimes what we do, we can listen to our podcast, any other podcast, we can find resources, and we start learning new data, but then we get to a point where there's a bridge we cross where it starts to impact our theology. And that's what this book is about. It's about, now that we know how to read the Bible, maybe with a few more tools, how do we re-examine our theology in light of that? And so we open the book talking about curiosity, talking about, we did that before, but let's take it to a new place. Let's talk about attention. Let's talk about wonder. Let's talk about what it means to be human and how we're designed to function and how curiosity is a part of that. And then we kind of go through 10 chapters of just, most of them stories, but really just examining 10 maybe key theological assumptions and saying, okay, let's ask better questions about this. Maybe this isn't what we thought. Maybe God is not who we thought. And most importantly, maybe we're not who we thought. So I really did love the title that we landed on, The Gospel of Being Human. It wasn't what I originally had, but I ended up loving it because we have been taught that being human is bad news. We've been taught that being a human, that's the bad part of us. But being human is a good thing. It means we're made in the image of God and have a really special partnership in his creation. And so this book is attempting to try to recover some of that.
Yeah, it's actually quite an interesting angle that you're taking. Like in reality, I can't say that I've actually heard this kind of angle in that. So when you do theology and whatnot, of course, you're encouraged to become aware of the interpretive lens that you bring to the Bible. But this is actually this is an interpretive lens that we bring to the Bible that we're not examining in a more detailed way. Is this something you've actually been thinking about for a while? How did this come about?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's 2 pieces on either end of this. The first book is about how to read the Bible. The end game is becoming more loving people. And I think I've been thinking about that for a long time, for years and years. And what is it that it feels like there's a piece in the middle somewhere about learning how to read the Bible and why we don't love our neighbor, love our enemy, love those that aren't like us, why we're not loving people. And for me, I thought, especially in Western evangelicalism, it's our theology. And so that's where this book kind of came out of, was this awareness of, I think there's an extra step here that we can't skip. Jesus asks us to be loving people. And the reason we're not loving people is because our theology doesn't facilitate us becoming loving people. And the reason our theology doesn't is because of how we read the Bible. But it's that theology piece that really plays an important role. And Reed and I wrote this book with my best friend and co-host on the podcast, Reed Dent. He's one of our teachers that Brent and I added to the team in season 6. And we do this together. And we're not thinking we're talking about the whole conversation or that we've got it nailed, but in the spirit of Bema, of just, let's re-examine this. Let's ask a couple good questions. That's what we're attempting to do. If we can start a conversation, not end one, that would be really good.
So in some ways, what you're saying is it's that transformative like power that we've been told that the Bible has, that and I think you're right. We can, like, as Christians, be reading the Bible for years and years and years and years, doing all the right things, going to Bible study, go to church. And yet that big piece is that it's not changing who we are. So yeah, it's a very deep examination, really, what you're talking about then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fun tagline that everybody picks up on the podcast is trust the story. And yet a lot of people that are paying attention will ask, like, okay, well, that meant a lot to me. And now I'm beginning to, like, I want to pull that apart more. What does that mean? And Genesis 1 is the story we're referring to. And it's a story about how much God loves his creation and where we as human beings land in that belovedness. And so it's a hopefully transformative, hopefully profound, a deep examination of, we all know that God loves us, but what does that really mean about who I am and how I live in the world? So I hope that's true. I hope that what you said is really great.
Yeah, it's really good on the podcast. I've gone forward through it, and then recently I've now gone back and I've listened to the re-recorded session 1, which was really good, and having those new voices from the later sessions in there and commenting is really good. I feel like there's a few things I didn't get the first time around, like you were saying, and then it was like things stood out. One of the cool ones I did is on the YouVersion app. There's a couple of devotionals on session 1 and session 2. So I actually did them. I was reading the passages and then listening to the podcast, and that was really good. And you start to, like you say, look at stuff from a little bit of a different angle, even to the stage of only this week on Tuesday we had our worship practice, and at the moment we're actually as a worship team going through the Psalms, and we're reading Psalm 12, and I'm looking at it and going, okay, there's a first half and there's a second half, and I think you know what I'm saying. What I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I smell a chiasm or something similar. Yeah, absolutely.
That's literally what he said. It's I do have to say, confession time probably for Josh, but he's definitely upsetting some very rigid theological views with some of our friends and whatnot with what he's hearing from the podcast, but in a good way. But it's usually received with discomfort at first.
I think that's for me the benefit of listening to it a second time. It's not that I was totally, it's hard when you hear something for a first time, when, especially for me, I was born in a Christian family, grew up in a Christian household, went to Sunday school, went to church, heard every Bible story. And like you're saying about that lens, like you get told this is what this means and this is what that means. And then you start to realize after a while that probably the people who are saying that this is exactly what that means probably actually don't know, or that's probably not what it means. You know what I mean? Like, it's good. It's good. And then the second time going around, you're like, now I've almost gone past the jarring shock of something new, that now you can actually take it in and start to put it into practice, So
that's very good.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways that does capture that first chapter where I'm trying to talk about attention there's curiosity, which we foster a lot in Bema and in the spirit of what we do. But then there's like, wait a minute, let's look at that. Let's keep looking at that. Let's look at that again. And there is an attention that leads to wonder. And that's really good. That's a more robust, a more full spiritual formation. And I like that.
So coming back to the book, in chapter 1, you talk a lot about mystery, which I absolutely loved. And I couldn't help but really identify and love your reference to Blacklist, the series. I was like, oh, yes, that is. Well, for starters, it's very true. But also I binge watched it maybe last year sometime. But yeah, absolutely. That program is like mystery after mystery after mystery, right? Like but I have to admit, I eventually stopped watching it because I got tired of the unanswered questions and because they often then do like another subplot before they move on to the big thing that you really want to know. So, I mean, what it makes me think is like we are actually quite uncomfortable at times with mystery today. So I'd love to get your thoughts. Like, why do you think mystery is something that we find really uncomfortable?
I think there's probably a lot of answers to this, and some of which I'm probably not an expert in, but I do know our brain chemistry and our bodies reward us for resolution. I remember reading in Brene Brown's books that like your I can't remember if it's serotonin or whatever it is, like your brain there's a payoff for resolving a loop, even if it's illogical and even if it's not even true. If you can close a loop, your brain is like, good job. And gives us a little mental treat, a little brain chemistry treat. And so I think that hanging in resolution, and I think that this is where if there's something that the church and our fellowship and our faith that we do with other people, if there's something if there's something that serves in a really good way, it is the rooted practice, something that's not always changing, something that's not mystery, but something that's very concrete and real and flesh and blood. And like you're talking about being on the worship team, singing worship songs on a weekly, as a weekly practice or more, or whatever those things are, it keeps us rooted in something. My theology kind of goes in and out of these mysterious places. But yeah, we talk in that chapter a lot about puzzles. Like we have designed our theology not as mystery, not in a relationship to mystery, but in a relationship to puzzles, a bunch of puzzles to be solved. And then like I'm literally sitting at a work desk. This isn't mine. I'm on the road, but there's a puzzle. I just realized this. There's a puzzle you can't see sitting on my desk to my right. And it's all done. Like it's all completed. And they've put a glass top over it. That's what we do to our theology. Like we complete the puzzle, we solve it, and then we just kind of like encase it and we display it, never to be pulled apart again, never to be re-engaged. And you're right. Our brain rewards something that then becomes dysfunctional, but it's also hard to sit in a space where there's no resolution either. And that's a very real experience we have.
Yeah, well, I've heard a lot of, I don't want to say preachers, but I guess that is the people that I've heard say, sometimes discouraging further study of the Bible. And I think it's because we often do walk away. I had a friend say to me, like not that long ago, I do actually believe that we can fully understand what the Bible says. And I got a little bit like, I've just been doing a Master of Divinity. And if anything, I've gone the opposite extreme. Like I've started to use this example when I'm talking to my friends where, there are some things in the Bible that I feel like you can go, yep, I think that may definitely be that. But most of the time it feels like it's giving you the guardrails of what it definitely doesn't mean more than what it does mean. Like you have to sit in a lot of uncertainty when you actually go deeper. I can just see that must be, and I certainly would love to get your thoughts on it, must be a limitation then on how deep we pursue the word. Because we go, done, tick, we've done that one. We understand that concept. Like the possibility of asking the question of, hang on a minute, have we read this correctly? Is this what this really means? That goes out the window because that would take us back to a place of uncertainty again.
Yeah, 100%. We both extremes keep us from engaging the word. Either the extreme of, I've got it, I've learned it, I've checked the box, I have the puzzle solved, so why would I need to go there? Or the other end of, like, I'll never, I'll never learn this, I never know, so why would I go there? What we always call the wrestling match on Bema. The beauty of that in between is, there's all kinds of things that we know, and there's all kinds of things that we learn, and it's so beautiful along the way. And yet it's not full resolution, because the moment I learn that, I can also turn the story over and start the process all over again. And I think some of us end up finding life in that space, but it is an unusual, unfamiliar space for many of us as folks in the Western civilized world.
When I was reading that chapter, I couldn't help but bring a personal challenge that I've been having in my own time reading the Bible. And that's that when you've been a Christian for a really long time, inevitably you are rereading stories that you have read many times over. How do you keep up that sense of mystery when you have had that experience, when so much of it is familiar? I often find that it's a frustration, because I'm going back and I'm like, read this as a person who's never read this before, but that's really hard to do.
Yeah, I think, and this isn't true for everyone. It's not that I would expect every believer to be this way. For me, it's why I love to study. I read an hour a day. I read about 45 minutes a day of something about the Bible, about the world of the Bible. And I'm trying to purposely be in a world that I am not trained in, not familiar with. You can get trade books that just kind of like give you the pep talk and tell you the things that you already know. And you kind of read it with this evaluation of like, I either agree with this or I don't agree with it. I love it or I hate it. But then you can read books that are like talking about things that stretch you, or that like they're just written at a different level. There are still lots of academic books that I start reading and I'm like, oh my goodness, half these words I don't even understand. And there's something about that for me awakens mystery. I would imagine for other people it might be different. For me, I love to keep learning, because there's so much to keep learning. And again, I think there's something to be said about community, because it's the Bible studies, it's the faith spaces, it's the sermons on Sunday, it's these corporate communal places that we gather that spark brand new thought. It's that challenge me, because if I'm just thinking to myself in my own head, I have quite a fun little tight, neat little conversation. I said clean and tidy. But if I'm having conversations with other people, it's not easy. I'm having to like, okay, how do I explain myself? Oh, that actually doesn't make very much sense. What are they saying? Like, I don't even understand that. Okay, let me try to understand that. Oh, that's actually a really good point. There's something about the communal piece that's actually very helpful too. That provides a lot of challenge. So there really are a lot of great pieces. We just tend to have ordered them. We tend to put everything in their proper place and think, oh, we know how this works, rather than the sense of like, okay, why do I still go to Bible studies that drive me crazy? Why do I still show up in those spaces? And when you get curious and you pay attention to it, you're like, oh, it's because it's helping me do something actually really helpful. And that's good.
Yeah, I think Mel's talks to me about this idea, especially in church and stuff like that, of confirmation bias, that, you know, we sit in churches and the people, when they this is good, and
amen,
they're hearing the bits that they agree with and that they already know, and they're not actually listening for the bits that they don't know.
Yeah, and when you can really tell when actually congregation is being challenged, because they go silent. So because they can't agree and process that information at the same time.
Absolutely. It's a great point.
Yeah. So on, I think it's page 31, there's a quote, which was, a rabbi once described the difference between Christian engagement with the Bible and Jewish engagement with the Bible by saying that Christians go to the scriptures looking for truth, but Jews read the scriptures looking for meaning. Can you expand on that idea of meaning?
Yeah. So we want to know, as Western Christians, usually, what is true. We're like mining the story for truth units, like strip mining the Bible for like as much truth as we can get out of it. where when we say Jews read the Bible looking for meaning, they're not trying to know what is true, but why does it matter? So this is true, but who cares? This is true, but so what? This is true, and now I'm blank. And so much so that truth actually, it kind of flip-flops. Because you're like, well, the truth, it feels weird. It almost feels blasphemous to say the truth isn't as important. But it's almost not. Like the transformation that the truth does, like that's actually what the Bible's going for. And we talked about that in the last book as well. But that sense of I don't want to just read these stories or the Bible looking for what's true and looking for the proof texts and looking for all the things that kind of prop up and prove what I already believe. Meaning's going to confront me. Even if it's meaning that I'm familiar with or that I would affirm, and like you were saying a moment ago, give a hearty amen to. Meaning is usually going to kind of make me stop a little and let it sink, like it's going to sink into me because it's going to go somewhere. So it's almost like what happens after truth and so what? Like they're asking the next question, where we tend to stop at the first question and just kind of start compiling and storing up and multiplying truth as much as we can. And that Jewish mind often tends to push it a little bit further in. And that's probably an oversimplification. I don't want to be too hard on us as Western readers. But I think there's something there to look at and go, oh maybe there's something about my own posture of how I read these things that I could grow in.
Do you think that in practice, this is just what my brain is connecting dots here, that we as Christians or the Christian community have had more of a tendency then to collect doctrines as a result of that search for truth? Like, how would that differ in
Yep.
if we were to flip that and it was more about us pursuing meaning?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. The Western world continues to create doctrinal statements, build creeds, expand on those creeds, reduce those creeds, whatever it is. But we have these lists of doctrinal beliefs that we adjust, shape, critique, reject, build again. It's kind of very static. It's a static list of abstract affirmations, which is why we, since the Protestant Reformation, have 40, 50,000 denominations and growing. Where in the Jewish faith, they have their own divisions at times, but largely speaking, their amount of divisions is a fraction of ours because there's a little bit more of a dynamic engagement with this isn't just what's true, but what do we do with it? And so when you expect that within your fellowship or your body of fellow believers or whatever you want to call that, you know that there's like the question that matters is the one about, okay, so what does this mean about how we live now? So that same Jewish tradition didn't have to write a new creed. They just said, well, God taught us how to think, and this is the world we're living in now. And so this is how we're going to do that together. And it's rooted on things that have always been true, and yet finding kind of brand new ways of expression within their own context. So I do think you nailed it. Like we love to create lists of truth statements that last for so long, and then some of them actually have to be re-examined or no longer work, or we find out later we're just wrong. And then we have to rewrite the whole list because there's no room to, it's not dynamic, it's static, it's not concrete and lived out, it's abstract. And I do think you nailed it. Yeah.
Well, it does seem too then that meaning would contribute far more to orthopraxy then too. Like it's a greater focus on how are we living this out, which I think sometimes we don't cross enough into that realm, like recognizing that so much of the scriptures weren't necessarily available to people. The real evidence, like back in the early church, I mean, like the real evidence of your Christianity was how you lived.
Yeah, 100%. People can't see how much I'm nodding as you say that. The relationship to orthopraxy, that's so well said. Orthodoxy tends to that other side we were just talking about, but it is this meaning almost demands practice. and practice it demands meaning. Like as I practice, I need to know why, and I need to know how and what, and my practice demands an understanding of meaning. So that relationship between practice and orthopraxy and meaning, I love that. I may be stealing that for the rest of my book tour. I like that, Mel.
No, go for it. Go for it. So like the big idea, like in the book that I could see is that we there's a revealing nature to the way we read the Bible in that it shows us what we think of ourselves. And therefore it's like this dynamic relationship where we're also bringing that view of ourselves to the text, and therefore interpreting that becomes an interpretive lens. But actually, maybe what we see about ourselves is not quite correct. And the thing that I definitely came to mind when I was reading sections that were sort of honing in on that idea is the fact that we do identify ourselves very strongly, and it's hard to say that it's wrongly so, with being the sinner, that is full of shame and sometimes obviously quite condemning, versus we're made in the image of God who also then sin. And therefore, when we read the Bible, I would hazard a guess that's how we get the real negative views of our humanity, which I can see like over the history of Christianity has affected therefore how we interpret Jesus, because we
100%.
have often more evidence of us struggling to accept his humanity, and therefore completely changing how we doctrinally define him, like in the past, I mean historically, because we're actually so uncomfortable with humanity. We've so
Yes.
I think in the book you said that being human is bad news, right? So therefore, does that mean Jesus's half that is human is also
Right.
bad news? So that's
Right.
that's what the big one that I could see when I was reading it. But I'd love you to talk about like what other kinds of things do you see Christians believing about our humanity that is negatively shaping how we interpret it, how we interpret the Bible?
Yeah, definitely the sinner thing is one we go after really hard in this book. And I hope that nobody hears us trying to say we're not sinners. I mean, that's such an obvious experience that we should be able to affirm without even thinking twice. We are sinners. We participate in breaking apart God's dream for the world. The question is not whether or not that's true about us, but how much is that supposed to be the defining mark of who we are? Is that the defining mark of our identity, is before anything else sinners? Or are we beloved and we're sinners? Are we made in the image of God and we are definitely imperfect and we're sinners? Are we, what is like when I think of people that I care about, my wife or my children, all of them are sinners, by the way, if anybody needs to know that. They're all sinners. I am a sinner. And yet our relationship, they're not fundamentally, first and foremost to me, a sinner. They all are. They're all sinners, but they're my beloved. They're my child. They are beautiful and talented and gifted. They're also rebellious and sinful. But I think our theology has been, we've taken one of those true statements and we've really centered it and then started to build all this theology around it. And so that's the one that we really go after. And the book is supposed to be about what it means to be human. And yet being human is always something that we experience in relationship to God. So there's a couple chapters that we deal with things like God's wrath. Like, what do we do with God's wrath? What is that? How do we properly understand it? How do we properly posture it? There are even a couple places where we hint at what does being human have to say about other humans in our life and how we view others, and how we, if this is true about me, well, then it obviously must be true about everyone else. And yet that's really book 3. So we don't get too far into that, but we definitely maybe plant some seeds and whet our appetite for the next conversation, because that'll be part of where the next book heads. But we talk about that as well. Our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with God, and our relationship with other human beings. What does a proper understanding of being human do to all those relationships?
It'd be awesome. And, if this is another idea for another book in that series, go for it. But our relationship to the earth, like
yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I talk about that. It's not in this book that I can remember, I don't know where it lands in the larger scheme of things, but oftentimes when I talk about Jewish theology as a whole, I want to talk about shalom
Mm.
and how shalom is made up of righteousness and justice. And in the rabbinical world, there are three components of that shalom triangle, and it is God, humankind, and creation. So creation is not an afterthought. It's not a PS. It's not a, it is one of the central triangular tenets to what shalom looks like when everything is in its proper place. And we have definitely left that unaddressed. That is probably a book that is a book worthy idea in and of itself. That absolutely. And we have fun talking about it in a lot of my other weekend events. But yeah, well said.
Cool. I'll be waiting for both of those books too.
I like that.
In the book and in your podcast, you mentioned this concept of 1,000 to 3.
Yes.
I guess my question there is maybe unpack that idea a little bit around God's love and what that means.
Yeah, I was raised in a Christian world that pretty much started theologically with the premise that God is equal parts holiness and love. Equal parts, and what they meant by holiness is really wrath. Like when you unpacked it, it was because God's holy and we're sinners and we're not. Holiness really is, wrath and holiness are almost being used synonymously. So in the Christian world, there's often this idea that God is equal parts wrath because of our sinfulness, but love because of who he is. And they're in balance. And one of my great convictions and just passionate teaching points is I just don't think that idea is a biblical idea. It's not an equal balance. Yeah. And one of the places I go is that story where God is talking to Moses. And it's a little monologue of God's that gets repeated often throughout the Hebrew scriptures. He says, I'm Adonai, Adonai, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in love and faithfulness and truth. I show love to 1,000 generations of those that love me, and I repay sin to 3 generations of those that hate me. And it's one of those passages I go to because the whole point of that is the hyperbole of 1,000 to 3. Like for those that love me, there's 1,000 generations of, and to those who hate me, 3 generations. So it's not 500 to 500. It's not perfect balance. It's 1,000 to 3. Now, I often like to point out to all the people that love that it's not 1,000 to 0. It's 1,000 to 3. But it's not this perfect balance. It's that God is love. And that love will actually drive him to pursue shalom. And sometimes that means discipline. And sometimes that will show up properly understood as wrath, as God tries to pursue justice and putting the world back together. But it's not equal parts. It's 1,000 to 3. And I think that's really important when we think about what it means to be human. I'm not sitting in a balance game of like, well, am I going to get God's wrath or am I going to, and it all depends on whether or not I've said the right prayer or sit on the right. It's God is a God of love, and he's inviting us into this relationship and experience of what it means to be his beloved and to join him in his shalom project. So that's a little bit of, it's one of my favorite chapters in the book. So I love that. And so far, you haven't asked me about any of Reed's chapters, so I don't have to fake it. So Reed wrote half of them, and we've kind of joked about what it will be like to do some of these interviews and talk for the other person. So,
well, I haven't been able to identify which one's which yet.
Good.
So in the book, so that's good. So there's clearly some cohesion in the way you guys are writing.
Good.
I did say to Josh just this week after reading the book that I could hear the literary quality in the book. It was actually a joy to just read the way you were explaining things as well. So I don't know if that was something that you were like, I want to write this a bit differently or whatever, but it was definitely, I could hear the beauty in the way that you guys were both expressing some of the ideas.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Some of that could be my own growth as an artist and a writer. Some of that is probably Reed's influence, and some of it's just having a great editor team over at NAF Press, and they help us sound even better than we really are. So I love that.
That's cool. Another one probably later in the book, and I actually just a few days ago to listen to this on in session 4 of the podcast is the lens of Romans, which I know is one of your favorite topics probably now,
Yeah.
but it probably wasn't before. But I guess reading the Bible through the lens of Romans and how probably I'm like you, and in the fact that when you have conversations with people and you're not agreeing on maybe something, which is fine. I think it's fine to have different views, right? Doesn't mean you don't love, but yeah, they'll always bring him up. Yeah, Paul said this in Romans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That was a tough chapter to get edited, to get all the way to publication, because it was hard to write without saying the wrong things. So I'll still sit trying to say the right things, and hopefully it comes out okay when it's all said and done. But yeah, there is a chapter in there on the Romans road, which was another big part of what I was trained in and the Christianity that I was raised in. Just really revered this particular presentation of what the gospel is and what it means to be human and what God's looking for. And so we walk through this presentation of the Romans road because it's the one book of the Bible that everybody wants to quote. You can do the whole thing from the book of Romans. And so I just wanted to go back and re-examine it and say, here's some of the assumptions we're bringing to that presentation. And maybe if we view these things in the right context by asking better questions of the book of Romans, asking better questions of the Bible, maybe we'll find that there's a better presentation and there's a better argument that Paul's trying to make about what it means to be human, but not what we thought originally. So that was one of my difficult. It was kind of a little, I don't know, I was probably in a spicy place when I wrote the rough draft of that chapter, and I hope the final product was okay. So yeah.
That's good. I guess, yeah, just to probably sum it up, really thank you for your time and your insights. We really hope that people, when the book comes out, people get into it and get onto it, because I think it is definitely something that could, help people change for the better. You know what I mean? But I guess, for you, like putting the book out there, what are you hoping will change for people? Like, what are you hoping will be the key takeaway for people from reading the book?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question to end with. I think if people just encountered their own belovedness, like the goal of this book is the gospel of being human. Being human is not bad news. It really is good news. And it's not the only news, and we're still sinners, and we're not trying to rewrite all theology everywhere, but we are trying to remind us of something that maybe over the centuries tends to often get lost, or maybe in the ways that we package it in our own contemporary world or whatever. We are beloved of God. And if that's true for us, it's also true for others. And if we truly own one of the things that Jesus says in one of his parables and stories is, those that have been forgiven much love much. Or this woman that's been forgiven, what is her response? Or like, this is one of the themes that we see in the Gospels. And if we can encounter our own belovedness, it will transform us, not as a theological idea, as something that we know, but something that has meaning and it changes us. And hopefully that does a really redemptive work in us and around us. So that's my hope, is that we encounter what it means to be beloved of God.
That's awesome. Well, I think we're going to bring it to a close there, Marty. We appreciate you so much, being on the road and jumping in to do this podcast interview with us. And yeah, we do wish you God's graces for your journeys, but also for the book. We really do our best on this side of the world to promote your book. We were handing out a book of yours, just the previous book, to a friend yesterday. So yeah, we know you got good stuff to say. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate you guys making time to talk about it and being willing to help me spread the word about the next project. So thank you.
Well, wasn't that awesome? I hope you got stacks out of that. And as I said, the book will be available in April 2026, and I'll definitely put stuff on social media so that you don't miss out and you get your copy. Now, I promised that I had an announcement, and yay to you for hanging in there till the end. So as some of you know, I recently finished my Master's in Divinity, and my daughter is about to head into high school next year, whom I have actually been homeschooling for the last 18 months. Naturally, I've been asking God a lot about his direction for me, and thankfully, he's revealed some new things that I will be venturing into in the new year. As a result of those changes, though, it doesn't quite fit into my life right now and direction to keep going with this podcast. Yes, I know it's sad. The Pink Elephant podcast is coming to an end. And it's been 5 years that I've thoroughly enjoyed. But different seasons call for different things. So we have one more episode left for this year, our finale, which is the statements we could do without, and that will be released in December. But that will be it for the Pink Elephant. It will remain on podcast platforms so you can go back and listen to episodes. And if you've connected with me on socials, you'll sure enough hear about all of the things that are coming up, because that's going to be stacks of fun too. I'll do a bit more of a wrap up in next episode, but I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the support and encouragement of you guys, the listeners. Until next month. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Pink Elephant. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, or you can check out my resources on my website, meljsayward.com.